Hey guys, it's Steven. Let's talk about a couple of things today. First, the power bar trade for those who like to follow along sort of on a daily basis with how it's doing in the queues. There were a couple of really easy, I thought, trades this morning or the first half of the day. The first one was at the open. The power bar fired off a long. So this was an easy trade to take and to stick in basically because it went up pretty quickly. We got the move higher, so it was in profit really fast. The second one was around 1142. Again, power bar that fired higher, take profit levels hit really fast. So that's pretty easy to do, right? Again, the power bar is a large candle off the 20 in the direction of the 20, or at least the 20 is flat and then it can go in either direction, and it's clearing support or resistance to the left. And obviously this was the resistance here. The resistance here from the pre-market was just around here, right? So that's the power bar strategy. If you want the cheat sheet for that strategy, comment power in the comments, and as usual, I'll send that to you for free. The third trade, and this is what leads me to the second thing I want to talk about today, is staying in a trade. That's what I want to focus on. It really is the focus of this video. The third trade was a short, and you can see the 20 had rolled. You got the power bar firing lower. It cleared support. It cleared support right here. And basically the stop is right here, just above this power bar. So this power bar was a little different than the previous two. And why is that? Because it didn't clear immediately, right? It was profitable for a couple seconds, and then it popped back up, and then it started moving higher, right? This is where I talked about in my last video, where the monkey brain takes over and it can become difficult to stay in a trade, even though, as you can see, staying in the trade was the right move here, right? The stop was never hit. You got basically a wick that went up and touched the 20. And then we started moving lower and had a really nice short. But here is where the problem is, because here is the point where you've entered the trade and it's beginning to go against you, right? It looks like a perfect setup, and then the candle starts ticking against you, just like this candle right here did with this topping tail. But when this is happening, you don't know that that's going to become a topping tail, right? You're thinking it's going to turn and it's going right through your stop. And as some of you guys commented on the last video I did, this is where you exit the trade. The thing is, most people think this is just being emotional, but it's actually not. It's a biological mechanism that we all have that is physically shutting down your ability to think logically. I've been doing this for over 30 years and have coached and been coached by a lot of different people. And I can tell you, you're not going to be able to willpower yourself out of this. You need tools to hack your biology. And again, it's the same for everybody. You're no different. You need to hack your biology back into line to keep you in trades like this. So what I'm going to do is share with you 5 tools that I have personally used and that I personally taught to my trading student to stop that anxiety loop, so you can actually trade the chart and not trade the fear. So let's take a look at those 5. These 5 tools, and I'm going to blow each one of these up so you can see it a little bit better as I talk about each one. But these 5 tools, again, I personally used in my trading over the years. I'm not a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist. So these are like very simple tools that are easy to implement, but they really have a huge impact on lessening trading anxiety. But just before we get to the tools, you have to understand what's happening under the hood. And that's this circle in the middle. When you get anxious, your amygdala, or the fear center in the brain, hijacks your nervous system. It thinks that that red candle on the chart that I was showing you is an animal, a tiger, coming to eat you, right? It's that fight or flight response. It floods your brain with cortisol and actually restricts blood flow to the prefrontal cortex. This is the thinking part, right? The logic part of your brain. So when you're panicking in the trade, when you're breaking out in the sweat because that red candle is going against you, you're literally lobotomizing the front of your brain. You're removing your prefrontal cortex from the equation. You can't think logically, and you certainly can't take logical actions in the trade. And I'll guarantee you, if you're watching this video, that you've been there and done that. So what the following tools that I'm going to go over are designed for is to manually override that amygdala, that fear action that you have in a trade. Tool number one is really preventative, and it's simply meditation. And I'm not talking woo-woo, incense and chanting and all that kind of stuff. It's literally taking 5 to 10 minutes before the market opens to practice sitting still, right? To still your brain. Meditations, to me, are like reps for my brain. Because again, what I'm doing when I'm meditating is sitting still, and think about how helpful that is to be able to do that in a trade. Not reacting, which is what you're doing when you're meditating, is the exact muscle you need to build when you're watching that stock pull back against you, especially right after entering a trade, right? Seeing it immediately go against you triggers that fear reaction really fast. Again, what I've done in the past is meditate for 5 to 10 minutes pre-market. It doesn't have to be something, long and drawn out. And that's it. It really lowers your baseline stress level so that when the market opens, you aren't starting the day already on edge. So that's number one. Number two is what I call the emergency brake. That's basically box breathing. This is for when you're in the heat of the battle, right? You're in the midst of the trade. It's starting to get volatile. It's starting to move against you. And you start feeling tightness in your chest, and maybe you start breaking out in a sweat. That's when you implement box breathing. It's a technique used by Navy SEALs. Maybe you've seen the Hemsworth guys series. I think it's called Limitless, where he trained with some firefighters who use box breathing when they're in the middle of fighting a fire. Athletes use it to calm down their body when they're performing. But it works by hacking your vagus nerve. You don't have to know what that is. But what it does is lowers your heart rate. It's super simple to do. It's a 4-count box, right? You're inhaling for 4 seconds, holding that for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, and then holding that for 4 seconds. Thus, you get the box. Super simple. You can Google it or AI it and find the description, but it's basically what I just said. You do that for 60 seconds, and basically you can't be in a state of panic if you're doing box breathing. It's basically a physical or physiological reset. So that's number two. Number three. This one's going to be a little bit controversial, I know, with some of you guys, but it works wonders for people who overmanage their trade or who over trade. And I literally just went through this particular strategy with one of my coaching clients this week, but it's what I call a cognitive split. Basically, our brains are designed to solve problems. And if you stare at a chart that isn't moving or is starting to move against you, your brain is going to get bored and start inventing its own problems. You're going to start seeing reversals against you that may not even be happening. You're going to be anticipating them just to give your brain something to do. So if you're in a trade, a perfect example, again, is the power bar trade, where you have a stop that is put in place logically and at the beginning of the trade, right? So you have your trade set up, you have your stop in place, and you start finding yourself obsessing over every, tick up and down. Literally pull out your phone, oh boy, and just start playing a game. Play something like Candy Crush or Mind Finder. Is that what it's called? The one with the mines that blow up, or Candy Crush. Something like super simple so that you're paying attention to the trade in the chart, but you're kind of splitting your attention. Again, that's why I call it a cognitive split. What you're doing is you're protecting your account from yourself. And this is, I find, a great way to do it is just do something, Google something that you're interested in, that you want to learn about that day. So you've got the trade on, but you're not focused on it the entire time. All right. So that's number 3, the cognitive split. Then number 4, I call effect labeling. And it's one of the most effective ways to get your logic back online again when fear takes over. It's really just narrating the trade, right? You're literally either talking to yourself or writing it down. Basically, studies in neuroscience show that you cannot be in a state of emotional arousal or high fear state and be speaking logically at the same time, because those two actions are using different parts of the brain. So when you feel fear rising when you're in a trade, just stop thinking about it and start speaking out loud. Kind of like I'm doing to the camera right now, because there's probably not a lot of people listening to me, right? Literally narrate what is happening as you're watching the trade. Go through it logically. Here's where my stop is. You can even say, I'm feeling anxious right now in the trade because it looks like it's going against me, but here's where my stop is. Here's where my secondary stop is. If you're using, a secondary stop, the example we were just looking at, right? The bar is forming, but it has not reached the 20 SMA yet. That's my stop. I'm not going to stop out until it gets there. And the reason for the trade is still valid, right? The structure of the trade, the structure of the setup is still valid. So I'm going to stay in my trade, right? You're saying that out loud. And by forcing yourself to articulate the situation that you're in, the setup that you're in, you're forcing literally the blood flow back to the logic, that prefrontal cortex, the logic area of your brain, and away from the amygdala, the fear part of your brain. You basically take the power away from the fear by naming it out loud. And finally, number 5, what I call the pre-mortem, right? This one's based on stoicism, which is a great way to approach trading. What happens is when you feel anxiety in a trade that you're in, it's because you haven't accepted that you can lose in the trade, right? You've got hope going, right? You're hoping you win in the trade, and the fear is that you're going to lose. So what you're doing with this pre-mortem, this stoic bet, as I call it, is you're accepting that loss up front. So before you enter your buy or enter your sell, you look at your risk. For example, if that trade is going to cost you $200 if it goes against you, you simply say out loud, I am spending $200 on this trade to find out if the trade and the setup works. That money is gone, and it's a cost of doing business in this trade. And that's it. If you accept the loss before you enter the trade, and you're really accepting the risk in the trade, and you're doing it verbally, there's nothing to be afraid of. You know exactly what your risk is, and you've told yourself what that risk is. So what you're doing is turning a gamble, right, something that causes anxiety and fear, into a business expense, right? Everybody has business expenses, and losing, which 100% is going to happen in trading, it's a cost of doing business. That's all it is. Finally, a quick bonus tip on top of the 5, and that is if you ever feel just completely frozen, you're like a deer in the headlights in the middle of your trade, do a physical state shift. This is something I think Tony Robbins does a lot, whether you're a fan of his or not, but it's something he talks about a lot, state shifting, and something that he uses a lot. But literally stand up, do a couple of push-ups, walk around your house, walk around the block. All you're doing is breaking the physical feedback loop that's happening in the middle of your trade. You want to break the mental feedback by doing something physical. So the market in your trading is going to trigger you. You're going to feel anxiety. It's almost like that's the job of the market, is to cause you stress. Your job is to have a toolkit ready. And again, these 5 are a great way to address that anxiety when it hits, so that you don't make a decision that's the wrong decision and ends up costing you money in the setup. So try these out next time you have a choppy trading session. You're feeling a lot of anxiety around your trading. Again, if you want the power bar setup cheat sheet that I went over at the beginning of this video, just comment power in the comments and I'll get that to you. If you want the indicator, this week is the last week that I'm running the lifetime sale for the indicator. You can go back and look at all my other videos on kind of how it works, how good it is. I think it's pretty good. And I'll put a link to where you can get it in the comments below. If this video was helpful to you and your trading, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll keep making videos like this. Thanks for watching, guys.